Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Bava Metzia daf Sadi Vav. We are going to begin on Sadi Vav Amud Aleph, about 15 lines from the bottom. Boy Rami Barcham. So we're going to ask multiple questions based on the dinim of the Arba Shomer. So we mentioned that when it comes to a shoyel, he's chayav and oinsin, with the exception of Baal Imois, which we've been learning in the past couple of blot. What is the din of shoyel or rava mahu? Let's say he borrowed this animal for him to sodomize the animal himself. Is he going to be chayiv and oinsim or not? So why would you not think this? So where it says like this: is it shayli inshi beinan lo hachi lo shayli inshi? Is it that it's the normal way of borrowing something for its normal use, and this is obviously not normal? Maybe borrowing something is because you're getting hana from that item, and therefore you're going to be chayav. So there's going to be a take on that. Sha'ol, another question. Let's you borrow it lirois ba. You're just doing it, says Rashi Shahi, near Usher Chashiv. So you look some big fancy guy, you have this look of him, he has a nice ox or a cow or whatever it may be that you're borrowing, but you're really not even going to use it, just using it just to show off on Instagram. Mahu. You do have something of value. You're not even getting really hana. All you're doing is just showing off. Says Rashi, you may feel good, but you're not getting real hana from the animal. So is that enough to be chayav and oinsin? Again, no answer to that. Sha'ala lasus b'pachas mepruta mahu. Let's say you borrow the animal and you only had less than a prut of work for it to do. Mimayna b'inan v'ika. So this animal is mamoin. Odilma kol pachas mepruta lo klumhu. The reality is that the work that it was going to do is less than a pruta. So maybe you're not going to be chayav. So for that matter, shol shtei paras las mehen pruta mahu. What if you borrowed 2 cows in order to do 1 pruta of work? Now mahu miamrin and zilbaser shoyel mashil v'ika. Do we go after the borrower and the lender, and we're dealing with a pruta over here? Odilma zilbaser paros v'chol chad v'chad aleika b'moina. If we look at the cows themselves, each one is doing less than a pruta of work. Okay, says Rashi, imtim saloimer pachas mepruta lav klum hachamai. So it's an imtim saloimer. And then the next question, shol mishutvin. This has to do with the din of Baal Imoy, that if the Baal is with you at the time of the borrowing, so then you're going to be potter if an oinus happens. What happens if you borrow from Shutvin, but only one of those partners work with you? Mahu kula bal beinan v'holeka. So there's only one of them, so therefore it's not considered bal imo. El dilma mehahu palgadide mia mifter. Maybe at least you'll be potter half. For that matter, shutvin shishalu. Let's say you have partners that borrow an animal. The nishal echanehen, but this guy who's the owner of this animal only works for one of those 2 guys. Mahu kula shabin and veleka. Does it need to be all? You have to work for all the borrowers, but you only work for one. Well, dilma who palg the shalmias mifter. At least maybe it'll be potter for that half. Again, shol mehaisha. Let's say you borrow from a woman her cow from nixi malug property. Venishal bala, and her husband is going to work with this animal. So is that bal imoy? Or for that matter, isha shishala. Let's say the woman is the one that borrowed the cow. Venishal labal mahu, and you work. So the woman borrowed the cow, and you work for her husband. Mahu kinyan periski kinyan guf dami olo. So this is the famous Ma'achlokas Reish Lakish Rav Yochanan, says Rashi, kinyan paris, because we're dealing with nixim malug, shabal oichel paris malug. The husband has rights to the fruits, but it's her land. So do we say that is it his kinyan paros? The husband, is he kinyan haguf? Says Rashi, v'havile balim shoyel v'nishal kiu karko par shalo. And therefore, even though it's her karka, so to speak. It's her item, the animal. But since he can derive the peros, so maybe if we hold that kinyan peros is kinyan guf, so then it is balimoy. Let's say you say to your shliach, say v'hishayali im parasi mahu. I want you to be lent instead of me, my cow, and you should work also with him. So the question is, normally we say Bal Imo is the owner of the cow, but if I appoint a shliach to do the work, so is that shliach shalan kamaisi? What's the din? Bal mamash beina? Do we actually need the actual person? Beleka because he's a shliach. Or dilma shliach shalan kamosa veika. So Amali Ravacha Baridu Ravabu Ravashi Bal Plukta Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish. This is totally in the Machloikas Shaliach Plukta. So Baal, as we said, is Machloikas Reish Lakish Rav Yochanan when it comes to Kinyan Peres Kinyan Guf. Shliach Plukta Rav Yochanan Rabbi Ishia. So Baal Plukta Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish Didmar. Hamercha Sadel Chavero. We kind of already established this in Rashi. In the Gemara also, a person who sells his field to his friend, leperes, in order to be able to eat the fruit, says Rashi. The buyer can eat fruits of this field for 2 or 3 years. Then afterwards it goes back to the original owner. So maybe bikurim v'kaira, arami ovid avi v'chol haparsha v'kari avi ani boy v'hini havesi es reishis b'adam asher nasateli. The kinyan peres can kinyan guf. So according to one opinion, you can actually be made b'kaira. Rabbi Yochanan made b'kaira, and you can actually make the declaration when it comes to the giving of bikurim, the field which asher nasateli, like it's my field. What do you mean it's not your field? You only have rights to the fruits. But if you hold kinyan peres as kinyan guf, so then you can say this. Maybe in a kaira, you bring the bikurim, you don't make this declaration. Rav Yochanan maybe b'kaira kinyan peres kinyan guf. Dami maybe in a kaira because kinyan peres, the fact you can use these fruits is lav kinyan guf dami, and therefore you're maybe in a kaira. Shliach, which is what we're getting back to, Pluto Rav Yonas and Rav Yishaya, the Sanya. Let's say you say to someone who's someone you trust, and you're going to another country. Therefore, you appoint an epitropos on your possessions, in order that with these possessions, this person will help feed your wife and kids. And you say to epitropos, Kol nedarim shedhei ishti noderes mekan an sheyavu mamakom ploini haferlah. I want you to be a shliach that any neder that my wife makes, you can annul. The Hefrula, and he annuls them. Yachum Mufarim, you think it works. Talmud Lomer Isha, you command of Isha Nifirena. The husband does it. Divri Rishaya. So Rishaya feels that we don't allow a shliach to do this. This is because it's Taisa says here, because it says it 2 times by Nidarim, so therefore it must be that only you are able to be made from Nidarim, not a shliach. And Rabbi Yonas and Aimer Metzia b'chol makom sheshulch shel kamaisu. There's a din of shulch shel kamaisu, so therefore it works. Amul Rav Elish l'Rabba Haimel Abdo save v'hayishal im porasi mahu. So going back to what we said, you go to your Ebed and you say, I want you to go with this my animal, and you should work with this guy. So is that Bal Imoy? So Tiboil Mandi B'Shulch Shadam Kamoiso, Tiboil Mandi B'Shulch Shadam Enot Kamoiso. So Tiboil Mandi B'Shulch Shadam Kamoiso, even if you say, for example, in the case of Nidarim, being made for Nidarim, the Shulch Shadam Kamoiso, and therefore because of that, the din is that he could be made for your wife's Nidarim. Maybe that's not here, because Hanimil is Shleach Davar Mitzvahu, because you're appointing someone who's a Davar Mitzvah. Avol Eved here, you're talking about a slave. The Labar Mitzvah, Loy. So because he's a not mitzvah, he's not Labar Mitzvah, and therefore in Shlichus, as Rashi quotes, we learned previous on Ayin Aleph, Mi'atem Gamatem Rabba Shluchachem, it's also brought in Kedushin, the second parak, Divinin Dimunim Shalech. You actually have to be comparable to the Shliach, and therefore the shliach has to be comparable to the principal, and therefore, if you're not a mechuyev b'mitzvahs, so you really aren't someone who can be a shliach. Even according to the one who says you cannot appoint a shliach to be made for your nedarim, hanimilu shliach avol eved yad eved ki yad rabo damya, and therefore it's not like really a shliach. An eved is like my hands, and therefore maybe it does work. Maybe therefore the din is that would be a case of bal imay. Samule mastabra yad eved ki yad rabo damya. It's mastabra. That's the answer, and therefore for that reason we say bal imay. Boy Rami is potter. Boy Rami Rachama. Bal b'nechsi ishtay. So what happens if you have the husband who is dealing with the nichse ishtay? He has his wife's possessions, again brought in through nichse malug, as we continue from Sadi Babum Beis, in which the husband has rights to the peros and she has the karka. Shoyel havi o soicher havi. If let's say he borrows or rents this, he doesn't borrow or rent it. He has this item. And now the question is, does he take upon himself the halakhic status of a borrower or renter? Says Rashi. Shoyel havi kasagadaitach l'schai b'oinse behemus nechsim elug shula. If an oinus happens, is like a shoyel, he's going to be chayev shu ois vehen malachtai. That's what we're thinking is the question. So if he's involved in her nechsim elug and an oinus happens, does he have the status of a shoyel? Omerabba lefum churpa shebeshta. Based on your sharpness, you've made a mistake. Manavshach. It's hard to understand. How do you look at it either way? Ishoyel havi shel babalamhi. If you want to tell me that this guy's like is a shoyel, a borrower, and since he's a shoyel, the din is that he is going to be chayv einsin. But this is shoyel babalam. Says Rashi, shehi imay tadir b'malachtai, because she's with him in the work. V'hinishelas lo techila mishinasa. And this is the whole notion when it comes to him working with her feet, her animal. So therefore, even if he is a shoyel, he'll be pater anyway because of balimoy. Isachar havi schiris babalamhi. If we're dealing with a renter, then it's considered to be schiris babalam. And again, as we said, by a renter, he should also be pater. Actually, the whole kasha is by Rami Bar Chama. A seicher, rather, if he's a renter, have a schiris babalam hu. Okay. Fine. So therefore, let's continue. What is the question? It's Rami Bar Chama. The ager mina para. He rented first the cow, v'hader natzva, and then only afterwards he married her. So it says Rashi, v'zachahu af b'para l'shtamish ba kol yemei haschirus. So it was rented before, and then only afterwards he married her. Shoyel havi o seicher havi. This is where the question stands. Shoyel havi is like a borrower. Yasi shelo b'balim, and therefore it's considered like shel b'balim, and therefore he's going to be pater. Mavka schirus, we remove the rental shelo b'balim, and therefore again, what happened is she rented a cow from someone else and then got married. So is it considered to be a case of being shoyel bebalim, and then it's removed the rental shelo bebalim? O dilma seicher havi, she a renter uschirus kidikaima kaima, and we say that the rent remains. So ma'ishna, so that's how we're basically saying. So ma'ishna, how do we understand the difference? The ishoyel havi, if we say that she's like a borrower, havi de asi she'elu bebalim, so mafka schirus shlo bebalim. Isaycher nami havi tesi schirus bebalim. It's like a new rental. So tepik schirus shlo bebalim. Elokikam a boiler mabachama kagain de agra ihi param alma. It means that she rented the cow from someone else. Bahadar natsva. So again, the first case is it was rented first, and then he married her. The second case is she rented the cow from someone else, and then got married. Believe the Rabbanan the Yamar Shoyel Mishalem Mosaicher Lo Shoyel Mishalem Mosaicher, that a borrower pays the rent to the renter. Lo Tiboilach the Vadi Sheil B'Bailimhi. It's definitely because like borrowing with the husband present. Ki Tiboilach Lib Rav Yosi the Yamar Taxer Parul Balam Harishainim, that has to go to the original owner. My Shoyel Havi Yosarcha Havi. Look at Rashi. Believe the Rabbanan. Didina the Shoyel Hadi the Mashahu, that if you borrow it first and then you rent it out, V'lo Eitzel Balam Harishainim Lo Tiboilach. The Vilhu Shoyel Hivanduli Didoboy Shlimi Potter. Okay. So Amarava Baal Loy Shoyel Havi Loy Seicher Havi Elokeach Havi. Actually, he's going to end up being Potter, as Rashi says, because he's going to have the din of a Loikeach based on Tekanas Usha. Mede Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina, but Usha Hiskinu Ha'isha Shamarcha B'Nixim Alug. If you have a woman who sold her Nixim Alug B'Chayim Ba'ala, in the lifetime of her husband who makes and she dies, Habal Moitzim El Kuchais, because he has the din of a Loikeach. Okay, and therefore he will be Potter. Okay, let's look at question 14. Be'ez oifen hanafkamina, the aboya bal nichse ishta yishoyel havi or yisercha havi. What is the nafkamina of the nichse ishta? Is it considered to be a shoyel or a seicher? So besachar he para ma'alma. She rented out a cow from someone else. V'hadar nuts, but then she got married. The libd of yoisi the haseicher para. If you rent a cow, v'shi'il acher, then you let someone else borrow it, like her husband. The din hashoyel, the borrower im habalim. I shoyel havi chayev. If he's a shoyel, he's chayev. V'seicher havi potter. Upashit rava doikeach havi. All right, fighter. When it comes to this case by Nixi Malug, and the husband ends up using something which is hektish, who is moil? Says Rashi. So let's say she inherited something from her father. The imahem moishel hektish. And among the things that she was yarish was hektish. Then you're doing shehitchel hektish. She didn't know. Yom Rabbanan. We know that the husband has certain rights. And he's like the shliach to acquire them. The kol sagadatas says Rashi, we think this is how it leaves to chulin, so that you can be moil. So Rava manli moil. Who do we possibly think? Limo bal. Do we think that the husband is going to be moil? The husband only wants to acquire things which are mutter, nothing which is usher. The whole takana for him to be kind to things is only something that he'd be allowed to use. So therefore, he shouldn't have been kind for it to be moil. So timol ihi. How about her? Even in something which is behenter, she wouldn't want to acquire. Says Rashi, Ella al karchach tiknu chachamim. So nimalu beistin. So maybe the beistin of Israel of that generation, shekol takanos mishpat tuli behen. Maybe they're the ones who moil. So kiyam rabban takanta. When did they make the takana? Be'amru balo keachavi l'hatera. They stored the law in the rabbanan takanta. The Rabbanan never made a takana that he's like a loikeach. El Umarava Baal Moil, the husband was Moil, only likashiyotzi, when he benefits from the item. Midiyahavi a maitzi mais hektish l'chulin, just like when it comes to monies that are hektish that go out to chulin. Iboilhu chachash baser machmas malachamai. If let's say the animal got weakened or the meat got weakened because of the work. What's the din? So says if it dies because while it's working you're chayiv. Nema, why don't we say lav lukma? Why don't we establish it kitra shilta, that you stored it away? But we know that it's meant to be used. El omarava lomaboy kachash baser machmas malacha the potter. Obviously, if you're using the animal and it weakens, you're going to be potter because that's obviously what you used it for. El feel mesa machmas malacha nami potter. But even if it dies during work, you're going to be potter. Diamrulei lavu ukma bekitam shilta. I didn't borrow this only for it to be stored away. Hahu garbi to show nagra mechabri. It was a person who borrowed an axe from his friend. It broke. Also coming to Rabbi Amalei zil isi sahadi. Go bring witnesses. The love shani spay the iftar, that you didn't deviate from the normal use. So it was basically mesa machmas malacha. The ilekas tahadi mai. What if there's no witnesses? Tashma. Tahu garbi to show nagra mechabri. A person borrowed this thing. The it broke. Also, when Rabbi Amalei zil shlim le nargamal. You have to go and buy a new one for him, because there's no witnesses that it broke while you were using it. Amuli Rav Kahana Rav Asi Rav. So he said, "Well, I don't understand. Dina hachi, is that possibly what the din is? That you're just going to assume that he broke it not on the right time?" V'shasik Rav, and he was silent. Look at Rashi. Dina hachi sheishalmo kli asoyi masukin, but not. We learned in Bava Kama. Gabi nizakin tashumi nezek that the owner is one who has to be a matapel with the nevela to be able to get the money for it. You have to pay the difference of the nevela, as opposed to how much it would be alive. So too should be given the broken pieces and pay the extra difference. So v'hilchos akrav kahana v'ravasi de mahadule tavre, return the broken shovel umamalule demei mana, and then you would give the difference in the price. Adkan.